let's start with this, and I think this is probably, if I can get a debate into your mind, this is probably the right one for everybody in this room. It's blanket, it's obvious, and now 7 years into VaynerMedia, consulting for the biggest brands in the world, being in that same period watching what Facebook and Uber and Twitter and those companies did as an investor, and then rethinking about what I did at Wine Library and what I'm now doing at VaynerMedia, there's an incredible theme that I think is quite universal, whether you're doing $100 in revenue in your business right now or 100 million, and it is the following. There is a stunning difference between branding and sales. If I can get you to leave with one thing here today, I really need you to debate, are you branding or are you selling? And they're very different. Selling is transactional, it's quick, it's obviously ROI positive, you get a yes, no answer right away, you know what's happening, and branding takes forever. So many of you, I would argue that the far majority of you are wearing clothes right now more because of branding than selling. Maybe 60, 70, 30, right? And I think you need to understand why you're willing to pay $5 for coffee. You know, is it convenience because it's in the building? Sure. But what is happening in our environment for small businesses that are able to then take it to the next level? It's the strategy behind branding and sales. And so for me, the reason I have fallen in love with social media is it became the first place that I saw ever that allowed you to kind of pick your path, right? Choose your adventure. If you wanted to be in sales, I'll tell you right now that Facebook is the first thing that I've ever seen that competes with direct mail at any kind of real level. And for some of the how many people here have done direct mail for their business? Raise your hands. That's great. I kind of remember that from last time. Direct mail worked in a very aggressive way. And to some argument, like I continue to test direct mail at Wine Library, A, so I could use it in talks like this compared to Facebook, and B, just can I still make it kind of work? I mean, at some level, almost everything continues to work. But for me, what I debate every day is it worth my investment? You know, to me, a television commercial, it's not necessarily dead. I do believe that a television commercial could work. I just don't think it's worth the $80,000 in production, the $300,000 in distribution, and the companies that spend $500,000 on remnant inventory cable television to sell product, I don't believe are getting the biggest sales and branding out of that $500,000 investment in a world where I now know that Facebook can hit scale, the creative can be less expensive, and the conversions can be more significant. So I think the biggest things that I really want to get across are, number one, create a framework and get you to decide where do you sit on the paradigm of branding and sales. Whatever you're doing in this room, no matter what you're doing in this room, you're selling something, even if you're trying to raise money for the PTA or bring awareness around your political views. No matter what you're doing, you're selling. And in that, are you in the sales or branding version of that? And what's your breakdown? Really, I never asked for exercises, but if you like literally texted yourself or made a note, it'd be really interesting to see how you self-evaluate what percentage of your 100% energy and money is being put into branding versus sales. For a lot of, how many people here follow me pretty closely on social? Raise your hands. Great. So as you can tell, what's really ironic is last night I decided to go on a crazy wine club binge, which I would call sales. But I think we would all argue, the ones that just raised their hands, I spend almost all my time on branding. I'm not trying to push anybody into a transaction. I'm just trying to overwhelmingly provide value day in and day out, so that it then creates, in essence, a practical karma event for me in return on business when I do throw that transactional sale. When I wrote a book called Jab, 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 Right Hook, it was to create a framework for a lot of people here on how to do social media right. This was 5 or 6 years ago. Give, 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 and then ask. And if you look at the far majority of what a business normally does, we're just in the ask, 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 ask business, right? It's natural to be selling, whether you're selling your SaaS product or memberships or whatever it may be, your t-shirts. And so for me, that framework is super important. And then once you realize that all the money, all the wealth, all the long-term impact on your business comes from actual branding, then you've got the real tough decision. that you've got to map, which is how patient can you be? How long can you hold your breath? It is stunning to me as a businessman and entrepreneur who is awfully ambitious and hungry as heck to win, how much money I have left on the table over the last decade. A lot. And more importantly, one could argue here like, okay, but you've been successful, so it's semantics. When I think back to my career and I look in this audience and see, how many people under 30 in this room? Raise your hands. So when more than half this room, or about half this room, is under 30 years old, when I think about the fact that I helped build, and again, I want to clarify the Wine Library story while I'm here with you. From 22 to 34 years old, for 12 years of my life, I built my dad's business for him. You know, I think the narrative needs to be very clear to everybody. I own 0% of Wine Library. So from 22 to 34 years old, while getting paid anywhere between $28,000 and $77,000 a year, I devoted 18 hours a day to a family business, which I had zero equity in, and built it from $3 to $60 million in sales, and left with no nut. There was no exit. When I was 34 years old and started VaynerMedia with AJ, I had zero equity value in my life. That's called patience. That's called running a marathon. I get emails from so many of you 28-year-olds. I have so many 27-year-olds sliding into my DM crying about no patience. Like, I want it to happen tomorrow. Like, anything great takes a long time to build, whether it's a relationship or a business. And I'll be honest with you, it is now stunning to me. You know, you get a little bit wiser as you get older. It is stunning to me that your ability to hold your breath for what you want completely correlates to how much you get in the business world and probably in life. And so, as I got up at 3 o'clock in the morning this morning and thought about what are the kind of things that I wanted to speak about, number one, I wanted to get you for the rest of your business career to understand what percentage of your time you spend on sales and what percentage of your time you spend on branding. I'm gonna try to persuade you to go into branding as much as possible, because long term you will make far more dollars, and I feel like in a business context that is the way we score and what we're trying to achieve. And I'm going to punish with my energy the notion of cashing in early, because the lack of patience is the detriment to everybody who's navigating here. And I want to remind everybody who's under 30, this is what us over 40-year-old, over 40, raise your hands. I feel bad for everybody between 30 and 40, sorry, no hands for you. What the benefit of us over 40-year-olds have in this room is we've lived through tougher economic times. If you're 30 years old, that means you're basically, your professional career, if you started at 22, you've lived through the last 8 years, which have been nothing but economic glory growth. What I want to remind everybody under 30 here is I lived through the internet era where in April of 2001, everybody got put out of business. Like one day the stock market just collapsed and everybody here with their t-shirt brand and everybody, you're gonna build the next Supreme and you're gonna build the next this. You go work at Bank of America. You go work at Walmart. You have no options. There's no raising capital. Great young man asked me, like, how do I raise capital for this? The answer is you don't, because there's no capital in the system. And everybody gets a job. And that, for me, compounded as a New York-based business, only several months later with 9/11, our little area of the world got unbelievably affected. And so, I also remember waking up and hearing Bear Stearns is out of business in 2007 and just watched that whole collapse. And so I want to remind everybody who's navigating through what they want to achieve in their business that right now we are living through phenomenal times, ungodly amounts of money in the system. This is data, this is not my opinion. Consumer dollars are at an all-time high. This is the easiest time in the history of the United States of America to build a business, because not only are we in high net wealth, we're also in the internet era that is now mature. It's 20 years old. For your grandparents, there was no laying in bed making funny pictures on Instagram and that became a business. Like, I just really, really want to ground the framework of this conversation, because basically what I'm quietly trying to say is if you're not winning right now, you kind of suck. And if you're not winning right now and you kind of suck, there's one main reason you're not winning right now. And it's the same reason that everybody else that's not winning right now is in real big trouble over the next 36 months, which is the following. We have fundamentally shifted over to a mobile-first environment in our society. Technology is now at pure scale. There is nobody in this room that doesn't live by technology and wouldn't be massively affected if the internet crumbled tomorrow. We are now there. I used to talk in 2002 in a place like this, 2005, right? Where half the audience, more than half the audience, was not affected if MySpace disappeared. We now live in a world where I don't even know what I would do. If I woke up tomorrow and the internet was broken, terrorist attack, gone, I'd just go back to sleep. Feel like I wouldn't even understand how to navigate society. And I'm not joking. I mean, it's quite scary to think about it that way, but I'm an optimist, so I'm not gonna think about it doomsday. I'm just gonna explain the following. Every retailer, all of them, that have inflated lease based on a world that doesn't exist anymore has to adjust. My dad has a 40,000 square foot wine store in Springfield, Short Hills, Millburn, New Jersey. I spent the whole week with my family, with my dad, explaining to him, unless we turn the entire second floor into an experience-based business, right, then he's vulnerable. Like, his overhead doesn't match the reality. Amazon bought Whole Foods. They now have a wine and liquor license in every state. Amazon's no joke. Wine Library's nice. Amazon's an assassin, right? And every single business will be affected. You may not have been affected yet by what we're living through. You may have not owned 50 black cars in New York and LA. You might have not owned 4 bookstores in Alabama. You may have not been one of those people. But I promise you, everybody will be affected over the next 20 to 30 years by this technology revolution. And that's a good thing. This isn't, oh, you're in trouble. This is either you see an enormous wave in the ocean and you jump on it and take all the advantages of it, or you put your head in the sand because you like the way you got here. The biggest reason so many people are gonna lose in this room, in this hotel, in this state, in this country, is because they become romantic about how they made their money. They like the way they did it the last 12 years. They know how they did it the last 20 years, and they're hoping that they can do it for another 20 years until they're done. The problem is, that's just not the reality of the world. And this is the reason, if you look over the course of history, why so many people go out of business. They go out of business for 2 core reasons. One, they pass it on to the next generation, and the next generation, and usually the 3rd generation, was so much more wealthy and had far less fire that they just let it go to crap. Or B, if they're unfortunate or fortunate, and this is for everybody in this room, they lived through one of the revolutions, one of the industrial revolutions. We are lucky or unlucky to be living right now in our careers, because this is one of the 3 to 4 major shifts in society, and this is where great wealth is created and great wealth is lost, because the ground changes.